I can't believe I'm sitting here and finally giving my impressions on a brand new Bethesda game, because these games come around once every 6 or 7 years, and when they come around, regardless of their quality, the whole industry stands still and everybody talks about it. This time, however, the industry is slightly different. I think we have different expectations of what these AAA games can be, and we also have different expectations on bugs and jank, something that Bethesda games are pretty known for. So I've played around 35 hours of Starfield, and while my impressions at the very start were positive, but not overly positive, the game just keeps getting better and better. So of course at the start, we're going to have to talk a bit about the story, something that I haven't actually done much of because I got distracted by some faction quests.
My master made me this collar. He is a good and smart master, and he made me this collar so that I may talk. Squirrel!
But the start of this game is quite slow. You're basically a miner, you're doing this job, and then you find this artifact that makes you see lights and you pass out and then you wake up on a ship. And to be honest, I don't think the first hour or two was anything to write home about. When you take games like any of the Fallout games or Skyrim or Oblivion, they had that walkout moment. You know when you come out of the cave in Skyrim, or you walk out of the sewers in Oblivion, or of course you emerge from the vault in Fallout 3. They are special moments, specifically Fallout 3. That moment will forever have a place in my heart because it truly is amazing, even to this day, and back then it was even more. But Starfield doesn't have that moment. I remember thinking, oh, here's the moment. I was coming out of a door and I walked out, I was like, oh, that was a bit underwhelming. And from there I was like, this is good, but it just didn't grip me in the same way that Skyrim or Fallout did. But of course, with these massive RPGs, you can't go off the first couple of hours. And one of the main reasons why I wasn't too keen on the start is that it was quite tutorial heavy. As I said with Fallout and Skyrim, when you come out of the vault or you come out of the cave, it gives you a quest marker of where you need to go, but you can pretty much do whatever you want. And you kind of can just go and explore whatever you want in Starfield, but the game is nudging you into a certain way of doing things. And there's also quite a few tutorials which I wasn't too keen on. But then when I realised how systems heavy this game is, I think a couple of tutorials is good. And if anything, I think it could have done with more tutorials, because later on down the line, when I had to upgrade my ship, and there was another couple of things that kind of confused me, and I kind of wish that there were more tutorials to teach me these certain things, because I actually had to look up a guide on how to add a part to your ship because the game doesn't explain it very well. But once the first couple of hours happened and I landed in New Atlantis, I saw this big sprawling city, and it's such a good city, it just looks so cool. The second you land in the spaceport, there's like people standing around talking, which then give you a quest going down the line. And that's one thing in this game that I really enjoy, and it makes the quest feel quite organic. Where if you're walking around any of the cities, you'll come across two named NPCs just having a conversation. And if you stop and listen to their conversation, it will lead you to a quest. And it's just something small, like at the end of the day, it's just replacing you talking to someone. But it just makes it feel that just slight bit more immersive. And all these cities are extremely fleshed out, and each one feels completely different. I guess it's just the nature of having a sci-fi adventure where you really can go all out, making all sorts of areas. Like Aquila City is a wild western town, and New Atlantis is this kind of really futuristic, very clean city, but still has like a dark underground. And then Neon is like a no-holds-barred kind of cyberpunk city where anything goes. And it's just great how diverse everything is. Like in Fallout and the Elder Scrolls, there are definitely some cool and memorable cities. But at the end of the day, since they're kind of locked into their world, you know, you can only do so much with a fantasy town or a post-apocalyptic town. But here, because it's a sci-fi futuristic thing, they can just let loose and just make whatever they want, and it just works so well. My first time stepping foot in New Atlantis, I met this guy that loved trees, and it just gave a really good backstory to New Atlantis. Apparently this tree was there when New Atlantis was built, and it's like the original plant that the whole city was built around. And then that led me on like a big massive quest where I had to go to loads of different places to get stuff from museums, because he thought the tree was letting out a low humming mating call or something like that. And it's just the fact that the world is filled to the brim with all of these quests. Every new city, every new town you visit, there's something cool going on. And it just meant that every single time I landed in a spaceport, I was walking around looking for named NPCs to talk to, or looking for named NPCs that were already having a conversation, and then just picking up random side quests because you really do not know what you're going to get. Like, I genuinely mean it. So far, these are some of the best Bethesda quests going, and I genuinely believe that these are the best cities in a Bethesda game I've ever played. I'm not mad for sci-fi. I've always preferred fantasy, but there's just something about how rich and fleshed out these areas are, and I just popped my headphones on, just walked around and just soaked in the atmosphere. It's honestly absolutely phenomenal. And speaking of quests, I've barely done the main quest, and the reason is because I got wrapped up in the factions. There are a lot of factions in this game, and of course we all know that they are the best quests in all the Bethesda games. And while I'm nowhere near beating the main story, I don't think it'll be any different here, because some of the quest designs and area designs in these main faction quests are nothing short of amazing. I want to keep this as spoiler free as possible, but so far I've done the Crimson Fleet, which are like the pirates. I've completed their quest line. And I've also completed the Freestar Collective quest line, and both of them are so fun. The Freestar Collective are basically these rangers that are set in that Wild West town. They go around helping people, doing, you know, the good deed. They have their little deputy badges. And that quest line was very good, but the Crimson Fleet one is phenomenal. And as I said, I'm trying to keep this as spoiler-free as possible, but there's a couple of missions in the Crimson Fleet one that are completely stealth-based. And while it's not on the same level as something like Baldur's Gate 3 with the amount of options you have at your disposal, there was just so many different ways to go about doing all these missions, and the different NPCs that you dealt with in the factions all reacted completely differently to how you did it. If you went stealthily, if you went all guns blazing. And no joke, when it came to the Crimson Fleet quest line, I literally just beelined it because I was having that much fun with it. And I don't want to speak too soon, but I really like the writing in the game. Again, I'm not one that's like massive on writing. I can accept the Bethesda writing. It's not the greatest. I think Obsidian do it better, and BioWare did it better. Not anymore, but they do it better than Bethesda. But at the end of the day, I still enjoyed the writing in the other Bethesda games, but I think here is just another level. And I think that not only comes from the quality of the writing itself, but just the amount of options you have. They went back to a more Fallout 3 style. I don't think there's as many dialogue options as something like Fallout 3, but there's significantly more dialogue options than something like Fallout 4, where it actually feels like you can sit down and have a proper conversation with an NPC, and not just, you know, say 4 different words, like a positive, a negative, a sarcastic, and then like an angry one. Instead, there's like a fair bit of nuance to it, and then also the persuasion minigame from Oblivion has come back.
Stop right there, criminal scum! Nobody breaks the law on my watch!
Which really helps me because I've always played like them sort of charismatic characters where you try to ask questions first and shoot later. And just going back on the quest design, like even something like Skyrim and Fallout 4, the dialogue options and like the persuasion and stuff, it just wasn't used as much as it was in the previous Bethesda games. But here they seem to have brought it back in full force, because there was loads of quests that I could have either attacked someone, I could have persuaded them, I could have lied to them. And then you start that mini game like in Oblivion, where you have to choose different dialogue options, and depending on how harsh they are is how hard they are to actually like pass the persuasion check. And you also kind of have to learn how to, you know, deal with the character that you're talking to, because certain characters respond to like kind of strong arming them, or certain characters kind of respond to being spoken softly to and stuff. And I just enjoyed like just figuring all that crap out. But I've spent a fair bit of time talking about sort of the story and the quest design, because it is obviously a massive part of the game. But another massive part of it, obviously, is the gameplay. And this game does have quite a lot of systems to it, and I wouldn't exactly call it confusing, but there definitely is a bit of a learning curve to figuring out different things. So firstly, the guns actually feel pretty good. They're a step above Fallout 4, and Fallout 4 already had pretty decent shooting. I don't think this game is like an absolutely phenomenal shooter, but it's definitely good. And also, I really like all the different weapons. At first, I was like, oh, you know, there's only a handful of weapons, and I'm kind of seeing a lot of the same stuff. But then once you finish, like, a couple of the faction quest lines, and you kind of get deeper into it, and you get all these mad weapons. Like, I have this one weapon. I don't want to show it off just to avoid spoilers, but it's just absolutely rips through enemies, and it's like a unique gun, and I just love that there are so many different unique weapons that I think I found like 3 or 4. I'm not sure if they are completely unique or they're just unique variants of already existing weapons, but they're absolute powerhouses. And yeah, I just have a lot of fun with all these weapons, especially the shotguns. The shotguns feel like really good. And then one thing I knew going into this is that they added like the jetpack that you could like boost around during combat and use it for like exploration and stuff. And I do like this, but like I was almost expecting something close to something like Call of Duty Black Ops 3, where the movement was very snappy and fluid. But here the boost pack, I don't know, it's good for traversal, but in combat I rarely used it, because all it does is just pop you up into the air and make you an easy target to shoot. It's rare that like I kind of use it as a way to close the distance between me and the enemies, because I was almost always better off just shooting them from a distance, staying behind cover and shooting them. So I do wish that the boost pack was used a bit differently, but it's not like a massive problem. But it's just something that I kind of wish was slightly improved. And then we have the ship combat, and the ship combat feels very good. I really enjoy the ship combat when it happens. It doesn't happen too often because there's some systems later on down the line that I'm going to discuss, the kind of things that I don't like about the game. And because of the way you get into combat, I've kind of avoided a lot of it. But when you do get into it in ship combat, it is pretty good. Again, there is a bit of a learning curve to it, because basically you can like reroute power to different parts of your ship. So like you can turn your shields off and up all the power to your engine so you can move around, or you can take all your power away from your engine to put into your gun so you can kind of be like a tank that just stays stationary and absolutely destroys enemies. And I really like that system. And then behind all that is a big massive way to build and upgrade a ship. And I've never been one for upgrading ships or like vehicles, and to be honest, I'm not really interested in vehicles in most games. So this is something that I kind of only used when I had to, and it's a fine system. There does seem to be quite a lot of depth. There's a load of ships that you can buy, and you can just build insane ships. Like I've seen people build like the Planet Express from Futurama, and just loads of famous ships from different games and movies, which is cool. But it's just not something for me. It's cool that it's there for the people that will like it. It's just another system to make this game even deeper than it already is, because this is a very deep game. There's just loads going on.
That's one fine-looking barbecue pit. Why doesn't mine look like that?
But then we get on to all the parts of this game that I don't like. And even though I love the game, I'm having a great time, and I seriously cannot put it down. Like when I'm in that loop of going from quest to quest, I'm just getting all this interesting dialogue, finding all this loot, meeting cool characters, going to new towns. It's absolutely phenomenal. Like, it genuinely is. I think it's one of Bethesda's, it could very well be Bethesda's best game when all is said and done. But there's a couple of things in this game that kind of annoy me, and I kind of wish they were done a bit differently. So the first one, which will definitely be able to be fixed by a mod, is just the menus aren't great.
Just take it all in for a moment. Let it soak in.
Navigating through your menus, even with a mouse and keyboard, it just doesn't feel amazing. There's just a load of walls of text that you have to go through, and you're constantly clicking. And then how it's done with your encumbrance, and you have to pick up stuff to craft, because I went with like a crafting build, because the crafting system from Fallout 4 is back. That sort of find random crap around the world and upgrade your stuff at base, and I really like it. But because of that, I'm constantly picking up stuff because I know they're going to be useful for crafting. So I'm constantly in the menus, and after 30 hours of flicking through my menus and then speaking to my companion, when I was playing Baldur's Gate 3, when you open your inventory, you can see all of your characters in your party's inventory, which is fantastic, and you can just move things around at free will, and it's brilliant. But here, you still have to do that crap. Press A on your companion, let's trade, and then they'll give you a line. Oh yeah, that's great, I'll be happy to carry. And then you go in, and then you have to change everything around, and it's just really cumbersome. And then it took me ages to realize that if I kept stuff in my ship, I could then access it at any workbench, because you basically get a home base at Constellation, and I was storing things there. And what I had to do was I'd store the stuff upstairs in my locker, and then I'd take all my resources out and then walk all the way downstairs while I was over encumbered to craft stuff. And it took me ages to realize that if you just left them in your ship, it would just craft it. I don't really think, I'm sure the game might say that somewhere, but it wasn't totally obvious. So I was spending a lot of times navigating through these menus, and they just annoyed me. And especially because your first ship has like a cargo hold of like 400 or 500 kilos or something. My current ship has like 2,500 kilos, so it's fine now, but the first ship, it just wasn't big enough. So even if I did know about having to keep everything in my ship to be able to use it, it still would have just been so cumbersome to constantly switch crap out. And you know, it's just a shame that like games like this do certain things so well, but they still can't get the menus right. Like the menus in Fallout 4 aren't good, the menus in Skyrim aren't good, and the menus here also aren't good. Like the UI while building a ship is the most cumbersome thing I've ever seen in my life. Whether you're using a mouse, whether you're using a controller, it just doesn't feel good, and it's very similar to how it was done in Fallout 4. So I kind of wish that was improved, but it isn't. But there's some more deeper systems in this game that kind of annoy me, because I didn't really watch any pre-release stuff going into this game, so I didn't really know what to expect. Obviously, I kind of had my own expectations in my head, and I don't want to sit back here and try to redevelop the game or tried to talk on sort of the technical limitations of certain things because I genuinely don't know, and that's not what I'm here for. But how the game is laid out is a bit disappointing, because since Oblivion, Bethesda games have become less and less about being RPGs and more about being open world games that have RPG mechanics, if you get me. Like, Skyrim was quite RPG, was kind of RPG-ish, and then Fallout 4 became less of an RPG, more about exploring the world, and then, you know, progressed like that. So I was expecting this to be like, since they were talking about the 1,000 planets you can explore, which is a stupid idea, and I'll get into that in a bit, but since you explore the planets, I was expecting something kind of like No Man's Sky, where you can just land on a planet, fly into orbit, no loading screens, but that just isn't the case. Basically, how this game is laid out is that you have a planet, you have the orbit outside of the planet, and then you have a map of all the systems that you can explore. So when on one of the main planets, you have like a city like, say, New Atlantis. But then you can also explore the surface, where you'll find like the randomly generated caves and the randomly generated mining outposts. And I did a couple of them at the start, and then I realized, look, these are all random, so I don't give a crap about them. The only thing is that there is, as they said, thousands of planets. Every single random planet is just the same. They have random resources, they have flora and fauna that you can scan, and then they have like randomly generated caves and randomly generated mining outposts and like abandoned mech facilities. And I don't understand why they went for this 1,000 planets thing, because if they were going for something that's like, this is an expansive star system that you can explore to your heart's content, then I could potentially understand it. But since this game is so segmented and everything is done through menus, it just doesn't make sense that there's all these random planets for you to explore. So how you navigate around is that you have the star systems map, and there's all of these star systems around that you can choose at your heart's content. And within them star systems, you'll have the main planet, as I said, say that has New Atlantis on it, and you can still explore the surface. And then there's random planets that have all the random crap. But how you go is that you basically click that you want to land, and then it sends you to the orbit outside of the planet, which is actually kind of like an instanced orbit that isn't actually connected to something. Or it's been proven that it is connected to something, but like you have to travel for like hours to get there or something. So I was hoping that I could go from orbit of one planet to the orbit of the next planet, interconnected, land on the planet, come off the planet, but that just isn't the case. There's obviously some technical limitations, and I'm not even going to try to attempt to speak on that because I don't work at Bethesda, so obviously I don't know what was going on when they were trying to make this game. Maybe that was their plan from the outset, but then they realized the technology just isn't there, which is fair enough. I think this game has some of, if not the best quest lines of any Bethesda game, but it has the worst exploration of any Bethesda game. I think that's down to personal preference on what you prefer. Because for me, there's something about just exploring the world in Fallout 3, 4, New Vegas. I know New Vegas isn't made by Bethesda, but, you know, it's in the same vein. Or, you know, going out in the world in Skyrim, picking a random city to walk to and just traveling. But here you don't do that in this game. It's very menu heavy. You're fast traveling to places. You're doing quests very quick. And to me, as much as I enjoy exploring the planets or the areas of the old Bethesda games, I really like how they did it here. I think I will take that trade-off of a more segmented world, but have fantastic quest lines. I think in an ideal world, for this game to be a 10, like let's say for argument's sake, I think so far this game isn't close to a 10. There's just too many issues with it. But I think if this game had the quest lines, didn't have the 1,000 planets and just kind of shrunk it down a bit, and then also made it that you can seamlessly travel from planet surface to orbit to the next planet to orbit of another planet, then I think that's what elevates this game. It doesn't have that. And I'd be interested if modders can mod that out. It's not completely inconceivable that they could mod that out. I don't know. We have to wait and see. All I know is that Starfield is a genuinely brilliant game. Bethesda games always have a long tail. And even if I had beaten this game, it's very difficult to review a Bethesda game when it comes out. Because Bethesda games have a special sauce that very few other games have. There's a reason why you can launch Oblivion now, you can launch Skyrim, Fallout 3, Fallout 4 now, and find new shit that you've never done, new areas you've never explored, quest lines or characters that you never even knew existed, all these years down the line. And I think something like Starfield, once I beat it, I will do a full review, and I'll talk more about the story. I'll do a completely spoiler review, because I wanted to keep spoilers completely out of this. And even I think if I beat this game in a week or two, then I will probably sit there and say, yeah, this game is fantastic, because I think that's where it's going. This game genuinely is great. I love it. But time will tell. A year down the line, when I do my second playthrough, I go with a different faction. I choose a different character to be my companion, and I go for a different build. That's when time will tell how great this game is. Right now, it's brilliant. I love it. And I don't know if it will elevate itself above what Bethesda have done before, or if it'll drop below, or if it'll hold to where I am currently right now. I really enjoy this game. I think it's definitely worth picking up for anybody who's interested in a Bethesda RPG, because it truly is brilliant, and you'll get some seriously phenomenal quests. It's very fun, and every single time I went to make this video, I was like, I'll play 5 hours more, because it felt like I only scratched the surface. And then I played another 5 hours, and then I'd sit there thinking, oh, maybe I'll play 5 more hours, because that'll give me more knowledge. Eventually, I just had to make the video, because I know this is going to be a 50, 60, 70, 100 hour game that I will review fully when I beat it. So that was a long video. I appreciate you listening to my rambling. Starfield is very good. What do you think? Because I love it. Thank you for watching. Join the Discord and follow me on Twitter. I'll see you all in the next video. Goodbye.